Hi, everyone. My name is Katrina Van Huss. I'm the CEO of Turnkey, and I'm here today to help you hear a great story about how a community created for revenue turned into something much more valuable. A community that lives over time and will contribute to both revenue and mission and sustainability. With me today, I have Ian Joyce, Chief Marketing and Mission Experience Officer, and Emily Clark, Director of Digital Engagement and Fundraising, and also Otis Fulton, PhD, social psychologist, who is Turnkey's VP of Psychological Strategy. So we've invited Otis today to help explain how this transition happened and what the humans involved were going through as they made this transition from we're raising money to we're helping each other. Emily, I'm going to ask you to start. And if you could talk about how this whole thing started and when it started.
Back in 2020, right before the whole world changed for us, we had the sense that we were going to need to pivot some of our fundraising programs because of COVID, just like every other nonprofit. And so at that point, we had a walk program that I managed, and we went through the process of defining what that walk program would be in the digital space. Simultaneous to that, we started working with Turnkey, and we were introduced to this concept that was taking off in the UK, these digital challenges. And so we thought that would be a great way to diversify our revenue stream in a year we knew we were going to see some major drops. And so I think we were the second nonprofit to take part in that program through Turnkey's partnership with the UK company we were working with. When we started that group, what we saw was a great way to acquire new supporters for PBTF. But what we didn't anticipate was families that are part of our organization would organically also be served these ads and find the group. And what drove a lot of the success in that group was really seeing how our families were advocating for PBTF's mission, sharing impact of programs that they've been affected by in a positive way, and really sharing their stories. And when those people chimed in and really connected with folks that maybe didn't have any relationship with a PBTF or our mission, we really saw some increase in fundraising. We applied some of the same principles in terms of ad acquisition to our Starry Night Walk program. And what we found with that was that our metrics were performing higher than what maybe national numbers were seeing in that 2020 year. And so we thought, okay, this is a great model for us to kind of bridge the two between an acquisition campaign and our Starry Night program, which is highly invested in mission impact and creating a meaningful experience for participants in that space. And so when it came time to launch last year's event, what we did was we combined those two concepts, and we made a Starry Night Walk group that was a national digital campaign targeting really specific markets where families needed support, and we weren't there and we weren't present. At that point, we decided this was going to be an opportunity for families to kind of create meaningful relationships, empower one another, support one another. And so in the past, we've turned off groups at the end of challenges. We made the intentional decision to keep this group open so that these families can continue to really build their community for themselves.
Love it. So you originally it was a revenue device. How did it do?
So when we first piloted, we ran it that first year as two different programs. We had that Starry Night Walk program, and then we also had a walk model that was separate from that. That first year, that first event, we invested around $3,000 in ads, and we generated around $40,000 in revenue. And for us, running an ad campaign the first time that was based on acquisition, that was to us, we felt it was a success. And what we really noted inside of the group is that the things that made that a success were the families that were organically joining, separate from Starry Night, that were helping to build that community. So we had families inside that group that were advocating for our mission, sharing mission impact, how they were personally affected, to primarily a group of individuals that had never experienced PBTF as a whole. Simultaneously, we took that kind of ad acquisition strategy and applied it to the walk campaign. and we ended up performing higher than some of the other walk programs in the country because we took those same strategies and applied it to the Starry Night model. So we thought, okay, we're on to something here in terms of what that Starry Night model looks like, which was deeply engaging experience with mission and honoring our families in their journeys. And so we took that concept and paired it with the acquisition ad model, and we really came up with what we ended up doing last year, which really helped us grow and activate in communities that it was much needed.
So you're activating virtually in multiple
Yes.
communities around the US. And
Exactly.
so there is a geographic tie, but it's happening virtually. And then
Exactly.
you're seeing some of that jump off into the real world, right?
100%. Yeah.
Interesting. Otis, I'm going to go to you and then Ian to you. Otis, why did families react this way? You know, it was an acquisition tool for fundraising, and yet something else happened. What was going on?
Yeah, let's just talk about what a community is. You know, a community can be any kind of a group of people that have a common interest or a common belief and so forth. And you know, we engage with communities to reinforce certain aspects of our identities. And you know, here you've got a group of people who, you know, their common interest was, you know, shepherding someone who had a pediatric brain tumor into a successful outcome. And so, you know, you had all of these folks engaging with each other now. And some of them were experts in doing this. Some of them were novices in doing this. So there was all kinds of opportunities for them to have, you know, kind of very enriching, rewarding engagements with each other based on where they were kind of on the scale of expert and folks who needed knowledge and so forth.
So Otis, I'm curious, when families joined this effort virtually, was it a big deal for them to transition from I'm interacting with people who share my experience to now I'm donating and fundraising? Was that big or small?
Well, you know, I think that the engagement will predict that kind of behavior. If people are getting value out of this kind of an engagement, this kind of an organization, you know, they will support it financially. And you know, you see that effect in the consumer world as well as in the nonprofit world.
One of the ways I've heard you describe it before is that people, once they're engaged in a community like that, they don't see it as donating. They see it as moving money from one of their accounts to another of their accounts because they're so deeply embedded in the idea of this community and the mission.
Folks that really have a strong belief that this is part of who I am. Yeah, they don't see it as giving the money away. They see it as kind of giving it to themselves.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, where of course you want folks to be, because it says that they're getting great value from the engagement with you, and you know, and they want that engagement to continue and grow.
I want to move to Ian now. Ian, can you briefly describe your background, including your for-profit experience?
I've been in marketing in a number of roles. I was the owner of a consultancy that worked with a lot of large global companies. I've worked on the client side as a corporate marketer, and have worked across a lot of industries. At the same time, for about the past 30 years, I've been deeply engaged with nonprofits. During the time that I had my company, I had nonprofits that were also clients of mine. So I come to this with sort of a dual perspective of having lived in the nonprofit world in a variety of roles and having been a marketer.
So you said something to me when we had a conversation earlier that there was something missing when you got to PBTF, and it was a pipeline. Talk to me about that.
This is an issue not just with PBTF, but with a lot of organizations that I've interacted with. They tend to think about fundraising very programmatically. So we have a number of programs for fundraising, digital and events in real life, like our Ride for Kids or Versus Cancer. And often, you know, budgets are huge drivers of behavior. And so program managers tend to look at things very much in terms of the revenue that they're driving. And pipeline can get lost in that. And so that's something that I've seen through my work with other nonprofits, that organizations that are intentional about using events, using a variety of initiatives to create a pipeline, tend to see revenue show up, often in really surprising ways.
So is your community a pipeline?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
How do you see, I often hear people talk about how to move people from a community like what you have into other areas of the nonprofit. And one of the things that we believe is that people will opt into other ways to engage when they're ready to opt in. Ian, what's your experience on that front?
Yeah, my experience is identical to that. I think that you know, I think it's really incumbent on nonprofits to give individuals, not think of people as donors or as advocates or as families in crisis, or however they engage with their constituents, but to think about all facets of the person. The people that we interact with have a number of concerns and interests, and it's dangerous, I think, to predict what those are. I mean, we have a sense of what they are, but I think you can foreclose a lot of possibilities that you simply don't want to do. And so, you know, I think that our job, you know, if we're being smart about this with our pipeline, is to expose the individuals in that pipeline to all the possibilities that are attached to our mission. So, and those come with various demands on the person. So, you know, becoming an advocate, for example, a grassroots advocate, is often not asking a lot of someone. You know, essentially we're saying, hey, share our story, or, you know, contact your legislator about a piece of legislation that we have interest in. Other kinds of activities might come with a little more of a demand on the person, but by exposing them to this, we give them the opportunity to opt in, to understand what resonates with them. So it becomes less about us talking about the need and more about them kind of looking around and saying, aha, you know, here's something where I really have the ability to make a difference and I want to get involved.
Love it. And you bring to mind some of the work and what we teach is around satisfaction. And it seems to me, Otis, that Ian just hit on something that's important in regard to satisfaction. Can you detail, like, you know, the trifecta of satisfaction and how it intersects with what Ian just said?
What Christine is referring to is psychologists have found that people who are satisfied with various aspects of their lives, they have three things in common. They report that they have a sense of autonomy, that they're, you know, self-directed. They have what psychologists call relatedness. They're connected to something bigger than themselves, which is the community that you guys have been describing. And then they have what is called competence. And what that refers to is they feel like they're doing important things with their lives and they have the ability to do it well. So, you know, what you guys have done is set up a situation where people can, you know, feel fulfilled through those three aspects. And again, that's very rewarding to people, and people come back to that again and again.
One of the pillars of what Otis just described is competence or recognition. And in the way back, Turnkey was a recognition company. That was one of the things we did. I think that's how you and I met, actually, Emily, in the way back. So tell me, in the context of this community group, how do you deliver recognition?
So I can touch on that a little bit. Within the group, we do it in a variety of ways. One is that we really want to share and highlight what people are doing to empower their own communities. And so we really strive to create a personally recognized opportunity where people are being highlighted and we're sharing stories, and people are empowered to also share their own journeys inside of the group. So what we're seeing is people are activating in their communities and going to that social online group, and they're saying, look what we've done, look what we've been able to accomplish. And then what we do then try to do is take that and share that with the other sort of entities within our community as well. And so it's less about items and gifts and incentivizing, right, which has served its place in some of these groups in terms of getting contact information, but that's not the kind of recognition we're looking to do here. What we're looking to do is show real meaningful impact that is being generated and pushed forward by our community, not by PBTF.
Yeah, and if I can just tag, if I can just tag onto that, I think one of the ways that shows up is in how we talk about ourselves.
Yeah.
It's not about what we do, it's about the community and our constituents and what they're doing, what they want, what they value. And, what we try to communicate is that that's what guides us. And we simply, take what we learn from that community and synthesize it into something that that represents a way of fulfilling a particular need that they have. So we try to never say PBTF does this. It's more about what our community is asking us to do.
Otis, well, I have so many things I want to ask about. Number one, I want to applaud you guys because what you've done is you've not clung to that old model and tried to get back. Instead, you recognize the new opportunity that the virtual environment offered, and you used what you knew to exploit it fully and in the best way possible. Otis, what Ian just touched on, when he said we don't talk about what PBTF does, can you talk about youth-centric communications? And I think that's basically what I'm hearing and what that means.
You want to talk about the supporters' goals. And what happens then is the organization kind of takes the back seat. It's kind of a counterintuitive kind of a way to talk about the organization and to talk to supporters. It's really empowering the individuals, and that's what fuels the engagement. When people feel like they're really are able to take action and make something important happen in the world through the organization, and they're not just kind of supporting something that's going on outside of themselves.
Ian, thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's very much aligned with our way of thinking. I think that one of the things I recognized when I showed up at PBTF a little less than a year and a half ago was that when I would ask people in the organization to talk about it, I would hear all the wonderful things that we did. And I would hear a laundry list of these things, and it certainly validated that we were doing wonderful work. But what I didn't hear was some sort of cohesive narrative around the people that we were serving. And I think that's what we've shifted to. And it's, and that's not just my influence, it's really the organization embracing this idea that first of all, we have to acknowledge that that the individuals that we serve and we work with and we ask for support from have their own needs. We're deeply interested in what those are, and then we have to figure out a way to put that into language that that they might have said instead of the sort of internal speak that we use sometimes to talk about, the workings of our organization. So I don't think we're entirely there. I don't know that any organization is, but I think that it's this sort of dissatisfaction with the way things have been and sometimes are that drives us. And I'm always fascinated when I talk to someone, a donor or a constituent or a family that we've worked with. And I start to hear language from them that sounds like something that we've adopted. So it means that, we're learning, we're iterating, and we're moving in a positive direction.
I love it. Ian, can you talk about the metrics of the group? Like, what metrics do you track? How does it, how do you dashboard your success beyond, are you keeping track of who's coming in through this community and how they end up?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at that in a number of ways, and I would say, to put it in marketing speak, the key metrics are probably conversion. If we're looking at the pipeline, how many and who are we moving into roles in advocacy? how many are we seeing donate to the organization, or start a fundraiser, or take some other meaningful action. And I think that, because we're dealing with a rare disease, I would say we're not working on the scale of some organizations yet. And sometimes our goals can be a little more qualitative. So we do, for example, a lot of state level advocacy where we're trying to influence policy within the individual states. And because of the nature of that work, we don't really need 100,000 people to, who are poised to call their congressperson. What we need are key volunteers who can come to the table, tell stories, engage with policymakers. And so often it's, looking within these communities that we've created and, identifying the individuals who are well positioned for that work and who are eager to do that work. So it's sort of a mix of the quantitative and qualitative
Right.
metrics.
I think it's interesting too. You get to see how they behave and do they play well with others inside the group before you reach out and invite them into this new opportunity.
Yeah.
That takes me to the staff support, staff modeling. Emily, you recently had a title change, and I think that's reflective of the change in method. Can you describe where you came from in terms of staff support, where you are now, and maybe where you see the future going?
Absolutely. So when all of this sort of started for us, I had that traditional walk title or walk director title. And when we saw a real need and growth opportunity in this digital space, our CEO at that point had the foresight to change my title to Director of Digital Fundraising and Engagement, knowing that we were going to be living in this space. It wasn't just a pivot point because of COVID. It was, this is where the future of fundraising really was going to be. Yeah. Well, when we shifted our philosophical sort of belief that you have to engage meaningfully first, that's when we changed my title to Director of Digital Engagement. We're leading with engagement. We're leading with impact. We're leading with opportunities to really bring our community in to make active change in the ways that they want to. And so because of that, it shifted sort of my way of working, which has been fantastic. We're really more focused on relationship building, and then those financial metrics are falling in line.
Love it. I imagine you are in the tech all day. Can you detail your tech stack?
Yes. So we use Classy for our peer-to-peer and community fundraising support. We're also in Virtuous for our donor management. To support some of these digital campaigns, we're also in GivePanel, and we use MailChimp for some email communications to those acquisition folks as well.
Right.
And then we just launched Tatango for our texting app. So we're really excited to see how we can start to integrate our partnership with them as well.
Very nice. Otis, I want to go to you. The tech stack brings to mind, like, there are so many different ways to engage. What is it that makes an individual in the community say yes to the opportunity that might be positioned to the community at large, like act on a legislative priority? What makes them say yes? What is it that Ian and Emily and PBTF have accomplished to get someone to say yes to new opportunities to engage?
Well, I think it's as we talked about earlier, it's offering people an opportunity to demonstrate competence, that they're good at something, they can make a difference, and that they feel that they're doing important work. And I think that it's very important. Ian and Emily, they take the attitude that we want to push this out to folks. That doesn't always happen, and I think you have to start with this attitude that we're trying to pull people in. We're trying to give them opportunities to take more responsibility rather than trying to do it all themselves, and that's how you grow the community, of course.
So Emily, I know that the community is not an if you build it, they will come endeavor. Somebody's in there all the time moderating. Can you talk about how you manage that?
Absolutely. So in the beginning, we, because we were so heavily focused on like that transactional experience before we knew what we knew, it was a lot of fundraisers inside that group. So whether it was a volunteer fundraiser or staff, folks that worked specifically with fundraising. What we learned though, is that what makes that big impact is that that voice that can really provide support, resourcing and insight into the programs that we offer, and what this fundraising and this commitment from our community is driving. And so what we've done now is we've actually placed our family support staff inside of the groups because the success of these groups is so driven by family participation. And we also have families that are actively seeking out resourcing, support for themselves, but also wanting to provide support for others. It was critical that we placed a program staff inside of that group. And they really drove a lot of the conversations in the beginning, but what we're now seeing is that our family participants are really driving that, and they're additive and they're there to be that support. But really, I credit that team for creating that network of really trust inside of that group, so that participants are able to engage in really meaningful ways.
That's so interesting. I've been doing this for almost 34 years now, and I distinctly remember times where I've been in rooms with people with positions like yours, and the discussion was, how do we keep the volunteers from talking to each other? Because once they talk to each other, they get the bit in their teeth and they're just running, and we can't control them anymore. And what I'm hearing you guys say is like, let the horse run. Let it run.
Yeah. Well, some of this is reflected. You were talking about sort of our organizational structure and how Emily's title changed. And Emily is part of what we call our mission experience team, and that's not just digital fundraising. It's advocacy, it's family support, it's our brand and marketing team. And so when we look at these initiatives, like how do we build community digitally, we're not having to go to another department or another corner of the organization. We're all there. They're already having discussions about how this is going to happen. And so everybody is primed to come to the table and contribute meaningfully to making this happen.
Love it. Do you have a story, Ian or Emily, about a family or a person that's come out of this group that you could share with us?
One of the critical pieces that has helped us meet families I'm about to share with you is we left groups open. We never closed down the groups. They are sustained year round. So that was a critical piece to this and our ability to continue to grow community. But with that being said,
let me interrupt you and ask you, when did you make that decision and why?
We made it on the forefront of the campaign. We knew that we wanted to, when we launched this Starry Night group that we launched last year, we knew on the front end that we wanted to keep it open. We wanted this to be a hub for families to connect nationally and be a support resource for each other. And so that's from the get-go, we put that family support staff in there, and we had a transition point where the fundraising campaign was over, where they then took over the group fully and have maintained it since.
Love it. Yeah, okay, go ahead with your story. Go ahead, Ian.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, in a sense, we're using fundraising to create pipeline for other things.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. All right. And Emily, you had a story about someone who came out?
Yeah. So we actually have two really great families that we've met because of this group. One, their child was newly diagnosed with a terminal diagnosis at the time that they saw our ads. So they joined the group and they held a lantern lighting ceremony, which is part of the group experience in their community at the time of diagnosis. Their child passed away, and they connected with us through the group and said, hey, we're really trying to honor our child's experience. The school is going to work with us. What can we do with the school? And that led into a bench dedication, and it brought all of our core mission experience teammates together to really lean in and support this family. And in the fall, they'll be launching a fundraiser to help support other families that were in their position. So it became this real full circle moment where mission met their ability to impact others. And that was a really fantastic one. And then we had another kid. He's a teenager and a golfer who was impacted by a brain tumor diagnosis. And he wanted to take his passion for golf and translate it into an experience where he can educate his community and raise money. And what started out with a $2,000 goal ended up raising $15,000 within a week. So,
Wow.
and he was inspired by another child that was fundraising inside the group and shared their story. So, you know, we're seeing all this sort of self-empowerment that's coming from this, and really where the community is inspiring one another. And so that's just, those are metrics that are really hard to get in some of those transactional experiences.
So the best practice was to shut down a challenge when it's over. You said,
Yes.
no, we're not going to do that. We're going to
Do that.
keep it open,
Mhm.
and
Yep.
we're going to support our families via this group and also use it for Starry Night. Work,
Exactly.
basically. That's
Exactly.
yeah,
Yep.
that's great. That's great. It's interesting too. Your CEO was born and bred in the on the ground walk environment, Courtney Davies. And
Yes.
so you know, very brave of all of you, I think, to say, yep, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Ian, let me ask you a question. So how important is this method, this effort to the future success of Pediatric Brain Tumor Foundation?
Yeah, there's no going back. You know, we work in a rare disease space. So there are about 5,600 diagnoses of pediatric brain tumors a year. You know, think of that spread across the US, and we have a national reach. And so if we want to, you know, meet this goal of being the first point of contact for families that that receive this diagnosis, then there has to be a digital component.
Mhm.
And I want to be careful to say we don't see digital in a vacuum. It's not that Emily is doing something that is disconnected from the rest of the organization. We're always interested in figuring out how do we weave a digital experience into real life experiences? How do we use it to build a runway to in-person events? So, you know, we think of ourselves as an incubator. We like to come up with ideas, we pressure test them internally, and then we want to put them out into the world and see if they work or not. And so digital is, you know, there's this buzz phrase, digital transformation. That's what we're going through. It's going to be a part of our DNA. And I think that, you know, the future is going to be a lot brighter because of that.
I love it. So we still have on the ground walks, but they are fed and supported by this group. And there are some people, I imagine, who only interact in the group. Is that right?
So we actually pivot away from on the ground walks in the format that we knew it in the past.
Okay.
Now we're really driving towards community events that will bring the community together, not necessarily walk events, but still live community events. Yes.
Got it. And are they spontaneously created by the group members, or do you guys provide some support in that and some structure?
So we have a mix of both. Many of our past walk teams have really taken to this model and have driven a lot of their own fundraising efforts through this. One of our top Starry Night walk teams actually just raised $50,000 in a pickleball tournament under this new model. So we're seeing some really great, strong kind of self-run events that are happening. And then there'll be some that are driven in the future by PBTF as well.
Yeah. You know, we've always had the idea that the word walk meant nothing, meaning like literally to walk equal to no activity. And I think that this sort of bears that out. Like we use the word walk because we needed a word, a filler, like we're going to do a thing, we'll call it a walk, but you walk all the time, right? So I almost think that this is, you've just acknowledged that, like it's whatever you want to do.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think we've, you know, traditionally there's been this desire to, you know, on the part of program managers, not just in PBTF, but everywhere, to say, you know, I've got to make my budget of X through this walk. So people are going to walk regardless of what it is they want to do. And the activity is just the thing that's on the horizon that people are working towards. And, you know, the fundraising, the recruitment, all of this that happens in advance, that's the important piece. And, you know, if somebody gets to the point of a walk day and that's not what matters to them and they'd rather play pickleball, well, more power to them. as long as they're engaged in mission in some form, that's how we're measuring success.
I love it. All right, I want to wrap this talk up with happiness. Otis, I'm a parent. My child's just been diagnosed with a brain tumor. What does this group mean to me? What does this group do for me?
It gives me the opportunity to engage with other people that are like myself. And, Emily said a very important word, which is trust. And, these are people that can enter into trusting relationships with others because they know that they're going through a similar experience with them. And those create very, very strong bonds between individuals. So, this trust factor can't be underestimated.
And with that, we will wrap. Emily, Ian, Otis, thank you all for joining me. I hope that you will be leading the way for the rest of the nation to embrace the way that you're looking at this thing, because I think you're bringing a lot of happiness to people, a lot of satisfaction, and a lot of comfort. So thank you for that. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having us.
All right. Change starts with just one person, you. If today's episode got your gears turning, don't forget to share it with your network. And hey, why not drop us a review? Your review helps more people find us and spread the good. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, this is Katrina signing off from Seeding Social Good Podcast by Turnkey. Stay inspired, keep making waves, and let's create a better world together.